right. Good evening once again. This is the Dominance Academy. Let's see here. Yeah, so tonight we're going to be talking about men and a little bit about what's happened to us, because shit's fucked up. Oh, but it's women's fault. It's feminism's fault. I have no responsibility whatsoever. None whatsoever. So we're going to get into that a little bit. Hope you're having a good week so far. Let's see. Nothing new. Nothing new on the docket, but still plugging away at my other book. That's going to be the submissive companion to the CODEX of the Sovereign Order, and it's going to be wisdom from like the high priestess of submission, if that makes sense. So it'd be good for both doms and subs to read, because you'll get a very deep yet high level view of submission and what really goes on inside the mind of a sub who decides to take it that far, who decides to take it off of the surface level of the plate, right? The surface of the table, where you're just kind of moving around the plates and the dinnerware and calling it BDSM. It's for those who have chosen to take things a little bit deeper and use it as a vehicle for transcendence, to move past your current state of average suffering. Because a lot of the average suffering that we undergo has very much to do with the states that we're in. It's really a major aspect of it, because the states that we're in, they tend to dictate what choices we make. And if we're in a shitty state, we're probably going to make shitty choices. Yeah. And then we have shitty habits, and then we have a shitty life. But habits are a funny thing, aren't they? They stick like fucking glue. But if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it, right? At least that's what they say. So yeah. And with that, with respect to that, if manhood was easy, everybody would be doing it. And it's not fucking easy. And people think that it has something to do with, going to work every day and working hard. No, that's being a drone. That's really being a drone. That's really not being a man. Being a man really starts with honesty. It starts with honesty, accountability, responsibility, recognition of the current state. And this is really where it all begins. It really all begins with the current state, and not sugarcoating it, not filling it with justifications, stories, deflections, explanations, excuses, and just being able to look at things very plainly. Because this is a skill that you need to develop as a man, is to look at things plainly and try not to put a tint on them, like a photo filter. If you ever worked at a photo studio, they have these big lights and stuff, and you can take these colored pieces of plastic and slide them over the lens of the light, and you can make the light red, orange, yellow, green, whatever. And so you want to be able to have that light shining without a photo filter on it. No color is cast. And of course, we're always going to have somewhat of a cast because of our natural biases, but we want to try to reduce it as much as possible by removing beliefs about certain things, removing our feelings about certain things, like all these ambiguous things, and just take things as they are. And when you start doing this with yourself, that's where the difficulty begins. That's when it becomes uncomfortable. And this is why it's important to, not ultimately necessary, but it's important to have a guide. That's why mentors such as myself are important, because they can kind of, walk with you with their arm around you while you're dealing with this shit. And they can say, hey, I've been here. I know how this feels. These are some of the things you can keep in mind as you're moving forward. But I can't take the steps for you, but I'll take the steps with you. And that's what makes the difference, right? Because I know where the traps are. I know where the like in Indiana Jones, when he's like walking along the footpath inside the temple, and there's like that stone. If you step on it, it goes down, and then like spikes fly out of the ceiling and kill you. I know where those things are. A good mentor does. And they'll tell you, hey, don't step on that stone. But I have this one guy, he's been with me for quite a while. And he's actually like one of my first clients. But it's one of my first clients as far as power dynamics go, when I shifted into that realm. And he's the kind of guy who needs to bust his knees on the ground. Like, he needs to smack his head into the wall. That's the kind of the person he is. That's how he learns. He learns through injury, emotional and psychological injury. And, and some guys are like that. Some guys need to bash their head into the wall a few times before they're like, okay, I understand now. Don't step on that spot. Now I understand why you were telling me don't step on it. I have clear understanding of this. But that's what his path is, to bring him to objective truths. So he does it the first time. There's excuses, justifications, mental gymnastics, and so on. And he does it a couple times, and each time he does it, those things start falling away until it's just the objectivity of what's happening. And then he learns. He's like, all right, now I know what to do. I get it. And that's just the way some people are. And then he has a laugh, and I laugh with him. And that's how it goes. You have to be able to, as serious as this stuff is, you also have to have a spirit of not taking it too seriously. Because if you do, it can drag you down tremendously. And I think that the male today has really veered away from this. They say, like, I remember when I was growing up, my first job was a paper route, and I had to get up at like 5 a.m. or 4:30 in the morning and roll and fold the papers in a special way. And then I would either walk or ride my bike, and I'd have to throw them onto the person's front porch, as I lived in this suburban area. And some people, they had it in a very specific place. Like, they couldn't be on their lawn. It couldn't be on the stairs. It couldn't be even on the foot, like the welcome mat. Like, it had to be inside their screen door or some shit. And each house was different. And I was told, and it sucked. Like, it sucked getting up at 4:30 in the morning or 5 or whenever I got up. And I was told that this is what builds character. And then that's the beginnings of it. because it's simple. It's very coarse, right? You're just simply doing something that's uncomfortable. And these are the things that build character. And there's so many things that you can do in life. But the easy thing is to just have this stupid little job that gives you a few bucks in your pocket that it doesn't really mean anything. It's not an important job, delivering newspapers, but it puts you in tension. Time under tension. The way muscles are developed. The same is developed with your character. The same is developed with your psychology, your emotional base. And the thing is that if you don't develop that emotional base and learn to navigate and cope with tension and kind of settle into it and realize, okay, all this is tension. And I've learned by doing this over and over in various contexts that nothing bad truly happens to me. And now I can just breathe naturally and be calm. And I think that the modern male has been so insulated by his predecessors that he has become very soft. And I don't mean soft of body, because there's always been soft-bodied men. It's not like in the 1940s, every young man was like a strapping young buck, chiseled and could do 200 push-ups, back to back. There's always wusses, wimps, and, fat asses and shit like that. So, but it's not about the physical. It's about the mental. Dealing with mental tension. Being able to deal with that emotional upheaval and face it with grace. And this, I think, is lost on the modern man because of the insulation of his predecessors. My grandparents, my generation, my parents' generation, grandparents, great-grandparents, and so on. And you keep going back far enough, and you see that the environment, you had no choice but to deal with the environment. And if you go back far enough, say back before we were building houses, the environment really was the test. Like, could you survive past a season, right? Like a winter. Like, are you going to die or are you going to live? and really what was measured in these times, and the times past that, when things were still difficult, was a man's competence. And now you look at things and all of our needs are met. So if we say a man of today should be competent in what? He doesn't need to farm. He doesn't need to fight. He doesn't need to have good vision, right? I mean, literally, if he's okay having vision between his eyes and a computer monitor, that distance is just fine. He doesn't need to have a strong body. We have very good like surveillance and like anti-terrorism stuff, CIA, satellites. We've got AI systems all over the place, cameras, police forces, fire departments, all sorts of things, right? I mean, you go back a number of decades and just trash was an issue. Like, what do you do with all your garbage? Like, when did that start? Where we had like a system where a truck would come by and pick up people's trash. I remember seeing, old movies, old videos, and people just throw their garbage out the window. That's the reason why women walked on the inside, like toward the building, like in urban environments. That's where that whole thing came from. So the woman walked on the inside, close to the building. The man walked on the outside, because when people threw their trash out, it would make an arc, and it would go towards the curb because they're aiming for the curb. So you decrease the chances of her getting covered in garbage if she's closer to the building. It has nothing to do with safety or possibly getting hit by a car or something like that. This happened. This was established before there were cars, and it was for garbage. That's all it was. It's funny how we take these old traditions and change their meanings, bring them into something that we think is meaningful. Like the whole chivalry thing. That was just behavior expected of knights only, and it had to do with the social architecture of nobility, of dealing with like kings, queens, dukes, and things like that. Like it was the behavior and the communication between that level of society. So if you weren't a knight, you weren't expected to be chivalrous, and it had nothing to do with the treatment of women. It was like an honor code. And somehow, probably going through the Romanticist period, it got warped into, becoming something romantic. Nobody knows the real history of Valentine's Day. But I remember reading one theory that it was an old pagan practice, and it was originally done around the time of this pagan ceremony for fertility. And the story goes that young men would get strips of raw animal flesh, and they would chase girls, and they would try like hit them with the strips of animal flesh. And it was kind of like a sign like, I like you, I want you to be my girl, that sort of thing. And so it was just like an old form of tag, but with raw animal flesh. So this year, I will I'll go to the butcher and smack my girl with a piece of skirt steak, because that's pretty thin and long. So that should be fun. I should be like, what the hell is this for? Happy Valentine's Day, bitch. What? But daddy, you hit me in the face with meat. That's not the only meat you're getting hit in the face with. So, but yeah, it's just weird. It's just weird, like the stuff that we do, and a lot of it has to do with comfort, and that's really kind of what happens. And so it's funny that the wonderful, strong men of the past, they built systems and structures, beliefs, perspectives, rules, laws, all sorts of governing systems and organizations to make life easier. And it's those very things that our ancestors created that has made men soft. And I don't mean soft of body. I mean soft of mind, soft of spirit. And so historically, the masculine authority that has been lost, it's emerged from basically two things: responsibility and competence. And that's basically the basis for it. That's the foundation of masculine authority, is taking responsibility and being competent. And today I look around, I see guys, they're very comfortable. They could say, I could give a shit. Let the world burn. I don't care. I'm just in it for me. I want to have a good time before I go. And so they're just throwing their hands up in the air when it comes to responsibility. And then they don't have any competence. Like, what is the modern male good at? I just don't know. Like, are they really playing sports as much? Probably not. Like, compared to like decades prior. Probably not as much. And you don't see, I don't know, like When I was growing up, my grandfather, my father, it was just known that if you owned something, it was your responsibility to maintain it. There was no there was no like fix it guy that you call. Like if the washer goes out, you get out your tools and take that thing apart and fix it. Figure out the part numbers, see where you can get the parts, mend broken things, all that shit. The car goes down, you fix it. Refrigerator compressor busts, you fix it. And now it's like, what, modern male probably can't tell the difference between a Phillips and a flathead. Probably doesn't know the difference between a chop saw and a circular saw. And that's a shame, because like, what are you good at? You're good at writing tweets on X, writing posts on X. You're good at making reels. You're good at trolling. You're good at arguing with people online. You're good at making AI artwork. You're good at making, like AI porn. You're good at watching porn. You're good at jerking off. Uh, what are you good at? What can you do that someone could rely on you for? And I think of a lot of guys that kind of look at that. They're like, "Damn, like not for much." And I understand like I understand their retort, because they would say, "Well, be responsible for what? Like what's in it for me anymore?" Because in the past I could be responsible. I could take responsibility. I could become competent. I could create my own little pocket, called it my mini kingdom of my own. And there's a decent chance that I would be able to get married and start a family and all that good shit. And you take that incentive away, which it has been, the incentive is drastically altered. They're like, "Well, what for? Like, what am I doing this for?" And what's been lost is the right thing. Because they're like, "Well, right for who? Is it right for me? Is it right for women? Is it right for society?" And I think that probably due to social media, we have become conditioned for recognition. Because I know my grandfather, he didn't have a sense of that. He wasn't doing anything for accolades or recognition, or even anyone to say, "Hey, good job." His awareness wasn't even in that. If it happened, sure, like he'd be like, "Oh, cool, like great, I appreciate that." But he's not waiting for it. He's not looking for it. Certainly not expecting it. And I think that in the world of social media, our recognition sensors have grown quite a bit. We want to be recognized for things. I mean, shit. Like, I think maybe the first person who was recognized for doing nothing was Paris Hilton. And I remember her getting famous, and I'm like, why the hell is this lady famous? It doesn't make any sense. Makes no sense to me whatsoever why this person is famous. She's rich. Her family, does like the Hilton hotels and all that stuff. Because prior to that, people became well known for doing something special that everyone couldn't do. And she was just like literally just getting on camera and talking. She was just being herself. And that started the era of anyone can be a star. The regular person, not someone with incredible amounts of skill or a special talent, something they've worked really hard for, you can just become famous for just existing. You can be respected for just existing. You can develop a huge fan base for existing. And I think that kind of spawned this whole thing. It's like, well, wait a second. If they can do it, I can do it. And people were saying this en masse. And now we have an entire society who wishes to be recognized for nothing. I think maybe the sentiment started a little earlier than that. And Steve mentions this of the man mindset. He says, he mentions the what is it? The participation award. And this was a shift. I think that kind of started maybe in the early 80s or the mid 80s. And I recall I was playing soccer when I first saw this. And it was like the end of the year party. And a couple of teams from my city, we kind of met all together in this big, I think like big cafeteria or something like that, if I recall correctly. And they would call up names, for people who had succeeded a lot. But then they started calling up everybody. It's like, what the hell is going on here? So like the MVP got to go up and get a big trophy, and then everybody else could walk up and get just this little trophy. It was about yay big, tiny marble base with this like plastic gold soccer player on it, And everybody got a little trophy. Even like Four Eyes sitting there with the inch thick Coke bottle glasses, who basically sat bench the entire time. He got a trophy. And so did the MVP. So it's kind of equalizing them. Like they both got recognition, different kinds of recognition, but they both got it. Prior to that, like if you sucked, no one recognized you. Like you were recognized for your effort and for your competence. It was rewarded. Same thing happened in art. There was a long, long history of being able to be competent with a brush and to be able to render realism and lighting, form, color, so it looks like it's really there. And then postmodernism came along, and they said, well, if I say it's art, then it's art. And it deviated. And then philosophy came into it. Whereas before, I could show you a painting of a particular era, and I wouldn't have to explain to you why it's good. It would be evident. If you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and you see these 8 or 9 foot tall marble sculptures, and they're done so well, the anatomy is perfect. Like all the muscles are in the right place. It almost looks like it wants to blink and look at you. It's that lifelike. I don't have to explain why that's good. But then the postmodernism came, and abstraction, and now you've got I forget his name, but he would just kind of like make colors that really weren't like in a tube or whatever, and he'd paint the entire canvas that one color, and then there'd be a plaque on the side of the painting about yay big explaining to you what it means, basically trying to justify its presence. And that's what we have today. We have the modern male trying to justify his presence, through social media. Look at me. For what? It doesn't make any sense. And then I think there's something that tugs in them, because I think in a lot of men, it's innate to want to lead. I think it's in us. And the thing is that in order to, you hear, in order to have power, you also have to have responsibility. Like if you want power, you have to have responsibility. And part of responsibility is understanding that there's consequences. So authority requires consequence in order to be real. There's a consequence of you fucking up. And I think that's another thing that got screwy because of social media. It made men very, very cautious to fuck up because they don't want to look bad, because that could tarnish a section of their identity. It's like this subsection of their identity, which has been fractured onto online. So some people, they can get destroyed. They can get mortified. And it's gotten so bad now that depending on the situation and who's talking, your entire life could get ruined because of something you've said. So now there is real consequence, but you have no authority. So it's like you want to be seen, but not too much. Because that might expose something of me, and well, then I'm screwed. So over time, in modern Western culture, consequence has been steadily removed, a little bit over time. And without consequence, there's just no authority. You no longer are in that position. So institutions that once forged masculine responsibility have weakened or straight up disappeared. And I think that changed the collective mind of men. Because also, due to social media, we've become very individualized. Like it's just me in this sea of, digital ocean. And everyone's that way. So you hear we say that we're more connected than ever, but the most disconnected we've ever been. It's kind of ironic. Mentorship is non-existent. I had mentors when I was growing up in various areas. It was normal. It was absolutely normal for a young man to have a mentor that wasn't his father. It was a particular teacher who had experience or knowledge in certain something. And that was his relationship to you. Mentors are gone. Find 10 men you know and ask them who's their mentor. They'll probably say, "What are you talking about?" Or if they do say something, it'll be some, jack off online that they look up to. They're like, "Oh, that's my mentor." It's like, but you've never met them. You just watched all their videos. They have no idea that you exist. And another thing that's been lost is the trial by fire. Now, the West has never really been big on initiations, rites of passage, like many older cultures. Older cultures have had these things for a long time. And it's this transition from boy to man. And the West had various small ways of going about this, but it wasn't like this overall cultural understanding of a trial or an initiation. And initiation has been replaced by affirmation. You just become affirmed, and now you're a man. And it's like, but you haven't proven anything. You haven't proven yourself. You haven't tested your metal. And not METAL, METTLE, your metal. Not to be confused with meddling. And so with that affirmation, what the affirmation did is becoming more affirmation linked, more affirmation focused, is that it, like, without being challenged. So you can kind of like stay in your bubble, you can create a false persona, like all this sort of thing. Okay. And so affirmation without challenge produces fragility because there's no friction. There's no real friction. Like, oh, big deal, somebody said something about you online. That's not real friction. It's nothing that's lasting. It's not going to change your image or your character, like your real image. Maybe your social image. But your real image, and perhaps the realest of images, is the image to yourself. It's not going to challenge any of that. So, but it's all built upon affirmation, confirmation, with no initiation. And therefore, we have a fragile man. The young man of today is so incredibly fragile. He'll either snap with tears or he'll snap with anger. Anything and everything upsets him. He doesn't even have a mountain hill. Forget about a mountain mind. He has like a valley. You know who also has a valley? Women do, between their legs. And so it's not and people joke and they're like, well, like men have become women, women have become men. Yes, the polarities have flip-flopped. The yin has become yang, and the yang has become yin. So the universe is upside down, at least the polarity of the universe. It's been flipped. And it's kind of funny in a weird way. There was this stand-up comedian. His name was Gallagher. And he was big in the 70s and the early 80s. And he had a twin brother. Identical twin brother. And I think they would like switch in and out, like when they would get tired. Very active comedy routines, sort of slapstick, a little bit like comedic social criticism, but not quite as harsh as like George Carlin. And he also had this thing about smashing watermelons. That was his thing. And he had this stool and he would put a watermelon on it. And he had this enormous wooden sledgehammer. Like the end of it was like a log, I think. And he would just smash this watermelon and just spray the front of the crowd with watermelon. And they would have like these plastic sheets that, the front row would have plastic sheets they would hold up and raincoats and shit. And he said, he was talking about women's lib, the female liberation movement. And he said, you ladies fought, he said, you ladies stood up for your rights and lost your seat. And now they're standing. And which means they can't sit down. They don't have a choice anymore. Okay, a lot of guys are like, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. All right, you can just kind of do your man thing in the world, as my ancestors have for, hundreds or thousands of years. And you're going to realize that when you get tired, you're going to want to sit down, and there's no one there to offer your seat. There is no seat at all. Men, we don't sit. We haven't sat. That's just what we do. It's just part of it. There's no break. You're like, oh, I'm taking a day off from being a man today. It doesn't happen. And when you're in it, you don't really look to have a break. It's like asking a tiger if it wants to be a break from being a tiger. It's not even like within its thinking to even conceptualize that. And and so they're out there, they're doing their thing, and the responsibility will be shifting. And I wonder if it's going to shift more than it already has. I'm curious about that. If ladies are, the more and more women are going to come into the workforce, and the guys are going to, they're going to drop back, and they're going to be like, hey, I want to be a stay-at-home dad. I'll take care of the kids. I'll bake. I'll clean. You know. And I'll tell you what, when women say being a mom is the hardest job in the world, it's not. It really isn't. I raised 2 kids because at the time of their ages of like growing up before going to school and all that shit, I was running my illustration business. So I could basically draw and paint whenever I wanted to. And because it was with publishing, there was no massive hardcore deadlines the way it is in like the video game world or the film world. And so it was pretty laid back. And come on, I bought food, I played with them, you know, through various ages. Sometimes plays just rolling on the floor, making them laugh, changing diapers, you know, listening to music, exposing them to like cool music. You know, my kids have got fantastic taste now. And so it's not a hard job. They would go to sleep. I could take a nap. I could work on my paintings, like whatever. It was chill. Like, it's not this crazy hard job. I was taking them to school. I was doing the sports things. I was doing all the different things. It's not the hardest job in the world. I'm pretty sure working on an oil rig in the middle of the ocean for like 8 months out of the year, that's fucking hard. You know? Being shit, what do they call those? Something hogs. It's a nickname for the guys who they dug the tunnels, and they're called sand hogs. And the sand hog was it was the nickname given to the urban miners and construction workers who work underground, digging tunnels, right? Like they like dug the fucking tunnels in, I don't know, in New York City, you know, from like New York to New Jersey. What was the Holland Tunnel was built in fucking 1920. And it opened to traffic on November 13th, 1927. Okay. They didn't have the technology that we have now. Like, I can imagine how many men drowned trying to build that tunnel. Like, I can't even think of it. Like, just like, imagine if we got together and like, hey, let's dig a tunnel from New York City to New Jersey. And it's not a short distance. I mean, it's not super long either, but it's like, okay, and it's going to be underwater. How are we going to go about doing that? Like the planning and the execution, like you fuck up, people are dead. Materials lost, time lost. Like, that's a fucking hard job. Like being a sand hog. Being a parent is not fucking hard. I get to cook and bake, go to birthday parties. I had so much goddamn cake when I was with my kids. Holy shit. You know, it's like, hey, let's do something fun. All right, cool. Let's go on the Circle Line. You know, it's like the boat that like goes around the Manhattan Island and stuff. Well, not the whole thing, but it like goes around like the tip, right? That's what she said. And, you know, fun shit. I go on the ferry that goes from Manhattan to New Jersey, or no, Staten Island, the Staten Island ferry. We just get on the ferry, drive one way, drive the other. No set. Go get some ice cream. It's not fucking hard. It's quite fun, actually. So if you do have a chance, you know, you want kids, I would figure out a way where you could uh, spend some time, at least a year, just raising your kids. Um, that would be it's a worthwhile venture. Just take 1 year, like away from your career or something like that, or if you can work remotely and raise kids, it's a trip, but it's not fucking hard, not at all. Bring back this part. Yeah. um, that's not happening. Everybody be dead. Yeah, that would be horrific. For those that don't know, it was this kind of training. It was a brutal, mandatory state-sponsored education and training system for the Spartan males, starting at the age of 7, all the way up to the age of 30. But look what they became. Like at the time, like they were the most refined piece of technology on the planet. Like as far as like combat goes, like these were top tier men in in many regards. Things have gotten so bad now. China has mandatory masculinity classes for their like middle and high school students. Mandatory masculinity. And the funny thing is like that's good. Like they're smart. They're like, hey, you know what? We see a fucking problem here. Our boys they're like jello. Internal and external. They're jello. We need to do something about this. Okay, mandatory masculinity training. Great. Okay. In the US, could you imagine if that happened? If a school came up to like, hey, you know what? Because first, that requires you acknowledging the problem. And acknowledging the problem is offensive. Right? Remember, we're all about this affirmation culture, right? Affirmation does not like being challenged. We just want to be affirmed. And that's it. So just in the idea, and then that would mean, well, that means they're not masculine. And of course, in this culture, they'd be like, well, what's masculine? Like, what does that mean? And so now it's all about like perception and belief. And, if I say I'm a duck, then I'm a duck, regardless of biology. And so, again, postmodernism. Before, there was no need to explain why a painting or a sculpture was good. It was plainly evident. And then we bring in postmodernist thinking, and it's like, well, let's start questioning everything. And that's fine. Like, it's good to question stuff. But it got so far that we got to the point of questioning. We broke down meaning of everything. And then nothing has meaning. You're like, well, what is a man? It's whatever I say it is. A man is a goat. They're like, I'm going to marry my goat. I'm sure that's legal in some states where you can marry your goat. I'm like, well, I'm into non-discriminatory polyamory, so I'm going to marry my goat and my cow. And people are like, oh, you're so brave. It's so brave. Oh, no. No, I want to scoop those people up and put them in a time machine and then transport them to the 60s and throw them into Vietnam. Throw them into Saigon. And see where that bravery lies. Not going to happen. So, with this affirmation, without challenge producing fragility. Fragility then prioritizes self image over responsibility. So you see, it's like cyclical. And because it's all about feelings. It's like I want to feel that I'm okay. So I'm going to create an image that I'm okay and completely disregard the whole notion that there's responsibility for my position as a man. Like man is a number of things. Sure, it's part of your identity, but it's also a position. Like a point guard. But because of our redefining and our image-based culture and our image-based psychology now, that's more important than the responsibility of the position that you were born into. And this is largely why a lot of my work that I do with clients, before we get into the fun shit, before we get into the power dynamics and all that great fun, we get into this self-image, this plaster self-image. When you look at it at the right angle, it's like, all right, that looks pretty good. But then I come in and just with just a tiny hammer. You ever see like those little baby hammers? They're real cute. Just like a little, and the shit cracks. And I say, do you know who you are? I'm this, really? Because it cracked so easily. Oh, let me see how angry you can get over your plaster. And so when the internal authority collapses, right, because you have to have internal authority before external authority, the external authority becomes performative. And this is what we're seeing online. We're seeing performative men. And then the young guys look at this and go, ooh, that's what a man is, because their reality is having like online perception, persona, identity, and link to is just as real as the non-online world. It's a seamless event. And so to them, these young, we're talking like maybe like 10 years old, they can look and go, ooh, look at that guy. He's so super cool. He must be a man. I mean, like subconsciously or emotionally. They're like, oh, look at that. And I had that too, right? Excuse me, like in a different way. When I was a kid, I was looking at Sylvester Stallone, like that movie Cobra, like the badassery from the 80s and 90s, mid 80s to early 90s, okay, or mid 90s, like that decade of like the action hero, Van Damme, Schwarzenegger, like all Bruce Willis. Like this was, it was the same thing. But here's the thing. We knew they were characters. There was a clear understanding. Cobra, right? Or Rambo, RoboCop, Dutch, right, from Predator. Like these are characters. We know they're characters. They're not trying to fool us that they're actually that person. So there's this distinction. We can kind of hold it as an archetype in our mind because we know it's not real. It's a character. And then it can be something to kind of strive for. And be like, man, I want to be like a super duper man, like, like Chuck Norris. I want to be like those fighter pilots in Iron Eagle. And, and it was inspiring. But today's kid, there's no illusion recognition. It's this seamless event where it's like, no, no, no. Well, I can't tell if they're a character or they're really like this, because they're pulling it off so well. And it's like, wait, like Andrew Tate, right? People were like, is he like that in real life, or is that a character he's playing? Because I hear here, over there. Oh yeah, yeah, he's like a super nice guy actually. And then over here, it's like, no, 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 he's actually a dick. And so there's all this like floating stuff, but there's no like removal of the mask publicly. You know, where when I was growing up, like there'd be Arnold and he'd be sitting there and he'd say, he'd talk about the character that he was playing, like during some interview on like entertainment television. You know, it was acknowledgement of the fakery. That doesn't happen. It's all supposed to be perceived as real. And we got kids looking at these things, trying to emulate. They're trying to emulate a performance that they think is real. That's the screwy part of it. Oh, hell yeah. He-Man, Dolph Lundgren. Oh, for the movie. Yeah, the Dolph Lundgren He-Man movie. That was so bad, it was good. It was just such shit quality, but it sticks with me. It really does. Yes. Hey there, kitten. I hope you're wearing that dress today. Oh, yeah? Awesome. You know, if I remember correctly, you're kind of like philosophy minded, so I think you're going to enjoy it. Yes. Yep. If you would, after you've read it, please go on Amazon and leave a review. It doesn't have to be 4-star. I don't really care. It just needs to have a review. So do me a favor and put one up there. So the performance authority, the performative authority, it relies on symbols rather than substance. And that's what the whole like online persona thing is all about. It's all about a presentation of symbols. It's a communication of symbolism. But there's no substance. And substance is built through hardship. External authority, the substance is built through hardship, accountability, and follow through. Just like that paper route that I had as a kid. There were real expectations on my shoulders. Like let's say you've built up some sort of persona online, right? You're on Twitch, you're this character and you're really funny and you play video games, but it's not really who you are. Right? You're performing. Things are going okay, but something comes over you one season, you're like, you know what? I just really don't want to do this anymore. Poof, you could just unplug and vanish. Do nothing or do something else. Completely just reinvent, rebrand, right? But I can't just go poof on my paper route. And the reason why I say paper route rather than like an adult with a job, because you could say, well, I could do that with my job if I really wanted to. But the difference is that it was not a job for money. It was a job for responsibility. It was a job to have accountability, to deal with the hardship, to deal with the follow through, to deal with expectations. Like I had everybody in the neighborhood expecting me to follow through. And so that muscle is exercised, lost on the modern man. What besides your job are you expected to follow through on? Do you involve yourself in anything that does that? No, because the pressure is uncomfortable. And God forbid something happens and your image is tarnished. Because you're so fragile, it's going to kill you. So as substance disappears, decisiveness declines. Right? Because creating substance and character, I mean, like character that's quality, not character as a performance. It develops a firmness and trust within the self. And this leads to decisiveness. Decisiveness is the backbone of authority. And decisiveness, the root of it, the raw ingredients of decisiveness has to do with self-trust, which is developed through doing things that make you accountable for things, that allow people to put their trust in you, and that builds in your own trust of yourself. And that, you put all that together, that's the ingredients of decisiveness. You can't have decisiveness without those precursors. And then that's the beginning of having authority, is the self-belief through hardship. Through, the hardening of your will, the ability to roll and to roll with the hits on your ego, your pride, your self-image, all of these things. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it was kind of embarrassing walking around with the big stupid orange vest on, that safety orange, the safety orange satchel that was heavy as fuck, dragging that thing around, full of newspapers, where I knew like there were kids who lived in the area. Their parents either just didn't want them to have any kind of like work like that, or they were living a soft life already. Very wealthy kids, sleeping in, that sort of thing. I really appreciate my parents for having like instilled some of that in me. That it's like, you're going to do this because it's required of you and it's the right thing to do, not because there's some grand payoff. Because I didn't get paid shit. I mean, I got paid, but it was nothing. It wasn't about the money. And so I'm like, what am I doing this for? And my parents were like, you'll see. And I didn't even see it for many years later. Many years to come. Did I not realize the importance of what I did? But there's some developments there where you do the thing and you grumble. And you pay attention to the quality of what you do. And you grumble. And then you just do the thing. But now we're so soft. The modern man has become so soft. I can't say we, but I say we because I'm amongst men. So incredibly soft. Somebody says something to you and you fucking lose it. And if it's almost, and if that's not bad enough, there's like this, if I can't beat him, I'll join him. So herein lies the birth of the troll. I'm just going to like become part of the problem. Oh, no. Hold on a second. It's good to have an alert dog, but it also fucking sucks. So decisiveness being the backbone of authority, leadership then is replaced by permission seeking and consensus. Check that out. I'll say that again. Leadership then becomes replaced by permission seeking and consensus. So there's no directiveness. You're asking, is this okay? Do I have permission to do this? Does this all sound good to you? It's committee thinking. It's hive thinking. There is no leader amongst committees and hives. And again, like that started a long time ago. It seems kind of new, but this is like the blown up steroid version of it. It actually started in the early 90s when like the whole concept of pod friendships began. Okay, and this isn't mine. I'm biting off of Steve. Shout out to him. And he recognized that it cropped up first in a show called Saved by the Bell. And that was the first time where it was about like boys and girls getting together in these pod relationships, and they would kind of like date in between each other, like that whole mentality. And this is like I remember like this was a shift. I remember being like, what? Like that's like that was astonished. Like that's kind of cool, but also weird at the same time. And this began that collectivist consensus sort of thinking. Is this all cool with you guys? So I don't want to look bad because I'm performing. I'm easily broken. I'm like fine china. So leadership is replaced by permission seeking and consensus driven leadership produces confusion rather than clarity. Right? So if imagine you're trying to decide on what kind of ice cream to get for the party, and there's 50 people there, and you ask each of them which one you should buy, because you're only buying one big tub of ice cream. It's going to be really fucking hard to lead that situation. Versus if you go, hey, is anybody allergic to chocolate? No? Okay, great. We're getting chocolate. Oh, Suzanne, you're allergic to chocolate? Okay, great. I'll get you something that doesn't have chocolate. Done. But now it's all consensus driven. And so now we have confusion. And the confusion just leaks out. It just seeps everywhere. You got guys out here, don't even know who they are. 30 fucking years old. And they don't even know what a man is anymore. Because they just question everything. They haven't defined anything. There's nothing in the environment to help them define it. You know, like challenge, rites of passage, character, like that stuff that puts pressure on that self and says, who are you? What are you made of? Nothing. So then what do you think happens when you have confusion? When you have confusion, it erodes trust. So now everyone can turn into an enemy. Everyone is a potential ops. Everything's a potential conspiracy. Nothing is opaque anymore. We're just seeing things as they are. There's no trust in anything. And there's been good parts of that. You know, for example, there's far, far less people who trust the media, like mainstream media, far less people who trust the government, far less people who trust these long-time standing institutions that say, well, you do this And you say, why? And they say, well, it's just because that's the way we've always done it. And now there's a lot of people that distrust and say, well, you know what? I don't believe you. That doesn't make sense to me. And so there's been a good that came of this, of the lack of trust, but it spread everywhere. It wasn't a refined critical thinking sort of thing. It was a dissolving that led to the mistrust. It led to the confusion, which birthed the not trusting anything. So as then trust erodes, rules multiply. And so rule proliferation is a symptom of absent authority. And what comes to mind is like the rules around, say, like certain conduct regarding pronouns. Like that rule came out of confusion. It doesn't come out of clarity. So we have more rules. So the rule proliferation is a symptom of absent authority. When there's authority, there's clarity. Right? Because it all whittles back. It goes all the way back to the very beginning of authority emerging as responsibility and competence, internally and externally. You don't have that. Eventually, you have like this absent authority and just rules coming up to take its place. And there was a time when there was more men, like with a capital M, around. You don't quite need as many rules because their presence alone creates sort of like an ecosystem, an invisible ecosystem. It has effect on other people's character because you've been of a certain quality to affect your own character, and it creates ripples. It affects your friends, it affects your wife, it affects your children. And other people, it is doing the same thing, affecting their wife and their children, their close friends. And so there's really no need, because character is the driving force. You know, if everybody behaves, like I remember there was this folk singer, this old folk singer, and he was on stage, he was like telling a story about this time that he was an anarchist, you know, not like the punk rock anarchist, but like a philosophical anarchist. And he was brought into court. It was like local small town court for something. I can't remember what. And he says, Judge, you know, he said, you broke the rules. And he's like, Judge, you know, that's the problem with your rules. He's like, the good people don't need them, and the bad people don't abide by them. So what's the point? And the first part of that is what I'm getting at here. With good people, you don't need rules. With men on the block, you don't need as many rules. But if you've got fragile, angry, hurt, confused, authority-rejecting, fragile, emotive men, you absolutely need more rules to control them, to subdue them. Because if they're not going to stand up, we need to make sure that they're obedient. So then, just to make sure that they don't get the right idea, authority is reframed as being domineering or abusive. So you get this while you're in the weakened state, you might be kind of like peeking over the fence of what the shit that I'm talking about and be like, well, what's over there in that man camp where they're like building fires and chopping down trees and shit? Like, what's over there? And they're like, no, don't look over there. Authority is domineering. Authority is abuse. Authority is tyrannical. So don't do that. And you wouldn't want anybody thinking badly of you, right? So you're going to be a good little boy and sit down and shut up. Here, have a new Netflix special. Here, have a Snickers. Here, have a can of Coke. Here, have some porn. Doesn't that feel better than worrying about what's going on over there? They don't matter. They're evil. Just enjoy yourself. Get high on dopamine. Get fat. Be happy. That looks hard. Do you see they're sweating over there? And if you could see, their hands are full of calluses. And if you see their heart has calluses too. You don't want calluses. No. Here, while you're at it, buy some lotion. And while it's moisturizing your skin so it's baby soft, you can use it also for jerking off. Just drain out all of your energy, please. It's going to be so much fun. So, so authority is reframed, and men are trained to distrust their directive instincts, because it's their instinct that has them looking over the fence and saying, there's something calling me to that. There's something calling to me of like what those guys are doing over there. I know there's only a couple of them, but like, I don't know, there's just something about like their vibe. I'm just like, I want to be part of that. I want to be that. But then they become trained to distrust that instinct to change the lowercase m into an uppercase M. To stand boldly, take the blows, run towards the bullets, again, as Steve would say. So they get trained to think, no, that's bad. That's evil. That's not appreciated. It's not liked. Women hate that. And there was that era. There was a period of time where they're like, no. Women do not like strong masculine men. They want an emotive man. They want a man who shares his feelings, sits down and shares his thoughts. This is what women want from you now. They don't want a strong, reliable, competent man like that. Like, no, ew. You need to be emotive. You need to really tap into your feelings. And not only tap in, but share them. Share them with the world. You know what? Start a YouTube channel and share your thoughts and feelings. You don't want to be part of the tyrants. They'll be extinct soon anyways. You want to be on the winning side. And this side, we have better candy and better porn anyways. Look, they're not even having sex, and you want to have lots of sex over here. So stay over here. So they're trained to distrust and perhaps even be repelled by their own instincts to be that capital M. And men responded by disengaging rather than competing. Right? Because one of the ways of showing competence is to compete. You know, either subtly, where you could say, you know what, I'm the best damn fucking carpenter in town. You know, you didn't actually have like a competition with the other carpenters, but you know, it's just something that's developed. You know, unspoken amongst the community or whatever. So there's no competition. There's no walking purposefully into hardship. They're just disengaging. They're like, oh no, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to have calluses on my soul. I certainly don't want them on my hands. So I'm going to just disengage. I'm going to be less engaged with the world. And then the collapse is silent because the whole thing, this whole fucking thing, happens internally. So imagine you have 50,000 men, or a million men going through various versions of this erosion. What do you think is going to happen to society? And then we'll just kind of like throw a couple psyop frisbees in there and make them blame women for everything. Blame it on the girls. Yeah, you know what? You're a pussy because feminism made you into one. That's some of the rhetoric. I mean, if you want to like dumb it down, that's what a lot of guys are saying. They're like, I have no power because girls gained rights. Girls fought for rights and I lost all my power. It's their fucking fault. It's girls and girl thinking that made me this way. So now you have like this outflow in a direction of their anger, their sadness, their loneliness, and all that stuff. And a lot of times their bickering is just between themselves. Online, of course. They're not getting into these like bickering with women. Actually, the only time I see it really is on Clubhouse. And that's because it's a speaking app and there's just like men and women are there. But that's a small chunk. Very small. So they disengage rather than compete. And the disengagement is read as apathy. If someone's disengaged with, like, say, like playing a soccer match, they're like, nope, I don't want to play. That can easily be interpreted as like you don't care, that you don't care about soccer. Because it'd be like, hey, if you cared, you'd be out here on the pitch. I think that, don't they call it that? A soccer field, don't they call it a pitch? So now there's this being read as apathetic. And then the collapse, like I said, it begins internally. Men stop trusting their ability to lead before they stop leading publicly. So without masculine authority, relational chaos increases. And again, they're gonna blame it on women, but it's not women's fault. I don't know if there really is a fault. It was because it's an erosion that's coming in from multiple directions. But here's the thing. Going all the way back to the beginning, responsibility and competence. Part of responsibility is not blaming other people or other institutions or other systems for your state. You know, you can blame, the government for making your taxes high, but we're talking about your state, how you perceive and how you feel about yourself. That is not anyone else's responsibility but yours. So that relational chaos just starts spreading like a disease. And then the chaos is managed through enforcement rather than leadership, because there is no leadership. Again, the rules. So you have more chaos, you have more apathy, no trust, rules increase. And who knows how far it could go. It might develop into living in like a military state, something like very draconian. So the crisis is not that men are tyrants, right? The crisis is that men no longer believe that they are allowed to lead. That is in them. Remember, I said there's that instinct. There's that instinct that wants to look over the fence where the capital M's are and do what they're doing. Feeling how they're feeling, thinking how they're thinking, communicating how they're communicating. Like that pull is there. It's real. It's instinctual. But because of the influence over many systems over time, and they're layered, they've come to believe that they cannot lead. They've even come to a point where they believe they shouldn't lead. That it's not a man's place to lead. That anyone can lead. And technically speaking, anyone can, right? Because leadership is a skill. But there's something in men that draws them to that neighborhood. Excuse me. They're drawn to that neighborhood that I don't think women have inside them. They're drawn to that neighborhood of existing. Maybe a very small percentage. But by and large, I don't think women possess that innate pull. And that's okay. That's not criticizing women at all. It's just looking at how things, as I observe them, just seeing things as they are plainly. So the thing is that, despite what I'm doing, what many other YouTubers are doing, coaches, mentors, and things like that, authority cannot be restored through rhetoric. And this is part of the problem because, the rhetoric part, because you guys have such loud voices. You want to start on this path? You want to start bringing your leg over that fence? Stop talking so much. Stop weighing in your opinion. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Just because you can leave a comment doesn't mean you should. Just because you can make a response video to that person doesn't mean you should. Be quiet. Say less, do more. So it cannot be restored through rhetoric, no matter how much arguing you do online. Even if you become a professional debater, what's his name? Andrew Wilson, right? He's a great debater. But that's not, that doesn't create authority. It cannot be achieved through rhetoric. It returns by relinking responsibility, consequence, and direction. This is how one reestablishes authority, masculine authority. And to bring that back, being responsible, taking on consequences, having direction, and becoming competent requires one to have internal governance. That's where this all begins, is having internal governance. Yeah. Yeah, he's been pumping the same message for a long time. It's funny, when I first saw his stuff years and years ago, I was like, man, this guy's shows, like, he basically ends up saying the same shit. It'll start off a little bit different, and then eventually it just starts, like, the topic just kind of like moves back into that. And I was like, damn, why is he doing that? Like, is like not getting into the depths or anything. Excuse me. So, and then I just keep watching, keep listening, and then he starts making more and more sense. And then years later, here I am basically doing the same thing. Like, if you look at my stuff, the shows, they all pretty much say the same fucking thing, just slightly different. Yes. Uncle Justin. Listen, I know it's a term of endearment, but I'm no uncle. I'm not certainly your uncle. So you can just call me Mr. Justin. And if you need a title, you can call me Professor if you want. But yeah, what's your question here? Is assertiveness also the backbone of authority? No. No, it's not the backbone of authority. It's an extension. So if we were looking at like the skeleton, assertiveness would be like a limb that comes off of the spine, right? Because assertiveness is something that takes action, okay? Spine, as it is, like as a term, has to do with foundational qualities, right? And foundational things don't move. It's a foundation. Assertiveness is about taking action, either of word or physical action. So let's see here. Yeah, so it's fucked up. It's certainly fucked up what the modern male has become. And I'm not one to make fun of them, although they do some silly stuff. They do some silly things, but I'm not here to make fun of the modern male. I think that the modern male doesn't even know what it is or what it's become, and to no fault of their own, because it's not like they have the ability to perceive how men were, okay? And so it's no fault of their own. You cannot judge someone for being genuinely ignorant. But the thing is that once you know that you have something, you have a problem, then you're completely at fault for doing nothing about it. So there's no problem being ignorant. The problem is doing nothing about your ignorance once you realize that you're ignorant about something. And if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know who I am, which most people don't, they don't know who they are, then it's up to you. It's your responsibility to figure that out in whatever way that you can. And there's many, many pathways. Many, many pathways. But if you're stuck on spending a lot of your time making sure that things are soft, fun, enjoyable, conflict-free, as far as like your experiences, then you're never going to grow. And then it's funny because the same people will have these channels where they can let out all their negativity, that pent up shit, which should be used towards like masculinity, but it's not being utilized in like masculine frameworks. So they're just like trolling each other online, bitching and complaining, threatening. I think about like how many times you've seen threats or heard threats online. Like, I'm going to find out where you are. I'm going to fight you. I'm going to come kill you. So much. So much. Like, could you imagine like James Bond doing something like that? Threatening somebody online that he was going to come beat them up. My grandfather would be very confused. I'd be like, Justin, what is going on with these boys? Why are they wearing nail polish and arguing amongst each other? Why aren't they at work? Yeah, my grandfather, he was a big dude. He was really big. I mean, like for his generation, for being like a white guy, he was like maybe 6'6", and he had these monstrous hands. And I remember watching him as a kid, and he took a walnut just between his thumb and forefinger, and he cracked it just by squeezing his thumb down. Like, fuck. You know, as a little kid, I'd grab one. I'm like, gonna squeeze it, hitting it on the table. He's like snapping a fucking walnut with his thumb. Try that shit. Try to get find a shelled walnut and try to crack it with just your thumb. But anyways, so I'm not making fun. I have compassion, and actually I have worry. I have worry for our society, because while you guys are sitting there bitching and complaining and criticizing feminism and women, really that's just a desperate cry for affection underneath all of that. And it almost seems like you're just like Nero watching the city burn. Or no, was it Nero? Caesar? I thought it was Nero. Yeah, it was Nero. The Great Fire of Rome. The phrase Nero, the Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD, where Emperor Nero was famously, though likely falsely, accused of starting the blaze, perhaps by fiddling, to clear land for his grand golden house. But historians suggest it was an accident in the crowded city, though Nero used the disaster for rebuilding and blamed Christians for political gain. Okay. So while popular legend paints Nero as a monstrous arsonist, contemporary accounts, especially Tacitus's writings, suggest he organized relief efforts. Relief efforts after returning from Antium, with accusations stemming from political enemies and later Christian persecution, according to thecollector.com. So I just thought that was interesting, where he used the disaster for rebuilding and blamed Christians for political gain, because that just reminds me of the modern male, where there'll be this terrible thing and they'll just blame it on women. They'll say women is the reason why society is falling apart. Look, women aren't wanting to become married. They don't want to be wives. They don't want children. And if they do, it's just, to get knocked up by the local Chad and just be single. And I don't want to be some stepdad. This is what they're saying. But the whole reason why there's that massive deviation, like a turning away from men, because men have turned away from themselves first. What do you expect women to do? Just come rushing into your arms? Oh my gosh, you're so unaccountable. You're so irresponsible. You're so moody. I just can't wait to bear your children. Gosh, I've been very sarcastic this show. I'm usually not like that, but it's fun to play around with sometimes. Yeah, I don't like sarcasm because it's like sideways communication. Just say what the fuck you mean. But it can be used for humor, I suppose. Don't speak sideways. Um, but yeah, it started when men rejected themselves. And of course, it's not entirely their fault, right? Because some of this stuff was massaged into your mind before you even were aware that was happening. But if you're grown and you realize these things happen, you have no excuse to harness your mind again and change around just your life. Because remember when I said 50,000 guys, right? And they kind of fell apart internally, and then we have chaos. Now imagine the opposite. As individuals, not as some like government program with like some sort of like incentives. We'll give you tax breaks if you take a masculinity course. Nothing like that. But individually, each of those 50,000 said, I am sick of this shit. I'm sick of feeling and existing the way I'm feeling and existing. I need to sort this out before I drive myself crazy. So if each of them did this, all 50,000, well, then we would have, there's no doubt that this would start to evolve society again. But you don't want to do it. A lot of guys don't want to do it. Especially when they start feeling that discomfort. They start feeling the discomfort of change within themselves, and they shrink back, or they run away, or they mask that, and they insult someone like myself, or they insult other men, make fun of us or whatever. Not that it matters. You know, it's quite irrelevant what they say. You know, because I don't live with anxiety. I don't live with fear. I don't live with anger. I live with peace. I live with stillness. Like, that's cool. Like that, I don't mean like attitude, I mean like temperature. It's cool. It's like a nice 70 degrees inside. 72. My thermostat doesn't change. Yeah, but it's not like I just put on a hat and boom, there it is. I didn't just like start a an Instagram account or TikTok and just told people about this, and then hopefully maybe through like osmosis or some shit, I become the thing that I'm talking about so much. It's not how it works. Because rhetoric doesn't create change. Change is an action. It doesn't come about through belief. It doesn't come about through discussion. Well, it can be inspired through discussion, like I do with my clients, but the change that occurs, it's something that you can do, or that my clients do on their own. And that's the reality of it. You can't believe your way into this. You can't image your way into this. You know, the neighborhood of men sort of dissolves that stuff when you enter. It actually gets dissolved on your pathway there. And then you arrive and you're like, I've arrived. I'm lighter. I can think clearer. I can feel clearer. You know, like if you ask like a modern guy, like, you're like, how do you feel? They'll be like, I don't know. Because of the chaos, the lack of order, the lack of authority, which creates a lack of clarity, creates chaos, confusion. So of course, internally, they would be confused and chaotic. Instead of just clearly understanding your states, your various states, your emotional states, psychological states. Oh, I'm like this. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling down. I'm feeling annoyed. Just very straightforward stuff. So my advice, if you're, one of these guys, if I could say anything, it would be to shut the fuck up. That was one of the acronyms that I learned early on when I started walking down this road. STFU. It was never written out fully. It was just STFU. And that is probably one of the best, the best lessons that I learned is stop talking so damn much. Be quiet. And stop feeling so much, but that takes more time. It's easier and quicker to just stop talking so much. Very easy to start. Very, very easy habit to build. So stop running your mouth, especially online, especially with people you don't even know or even care about. And then look at the ticker. Power then becomes contained at that point. And the power becomes law. And then once the law is there, you become the architect of everything that unfolds from that. That's what I was referring to when, say, in that fantasy of the 50,000 men who did this paradigm shift. Their world around them, they become the architect of that. Not by decision, but just by the presence alone. And to think that this isn't going to have a positive effect on women. They're crazy. You see, and I'm happy about this development that I've noticed, is that there is a shifting away. Of course, it's going to be what's going to take its place is another bit of bullshit, but we're in a transitionary period, so there's a bit of clarity between trends. And the trends that is slipping away is the looks, money, status trend. I'm so happy that is gone. Right? Red pill, gone. MGTOW, gone. All these trends where people beat on their chest, I am MGTOW. Like in 300. What are you? A fisherman? What are you? I'm a cobbler. Spartans? What are you? Whoa, whoa. That's what these guys are. Anyways. So, all right, I'm going to leave you guys with that. And, I hope this was illuminating for you. Okay. And just know, everything that you're seeking to build, acquire, become, it's all sitting there right with you, just dormant. That's it. Just sitting there right with you, dormant. You don't have to buy anything. I mean, if anything, a call with me. If you really want to buy something that would lead you towards this thing, but it's not going to be found in any mall. And some cookie cut course that you buy online, how to be a man, because all the tools you need are just sitting in you. You just have to create some silence, which means stop talking so much, stop arguing, stop engaging so much. Take time throughout your day to not have social media. And I don't mean when you're working. Time when you're not working, you're not at the gym, and you're not doing shit. It shouldn't be filled up with social media. Try it. Like, put yourself a timer of like, okay, I'm going to put a timer on my phone, 30 minutes, and I'm not going to engage with social media at all. And that doesn't mean hop on, television and start watching Netflix, because it's like kind of the same thing. Because it's all just sensory inputs that, jack your dopamine, give you some sort of version of entertainment. I mean, none of that shit. No video games. At best, a book, like with pages, like actual paper pages. So that would be my challenge to you. Carve out some time, 20, 30 minutes each day. And it's probably going to produce some kind of anxiety, some sort of withdrawal. Sit in it. Don't veer away. Don't try to fix it. Don't do any of that shit. Just sit in it. It's only 20 minutes. I think you can handle it. But that's the discomfort. That's a bit of the internal hardship, a tiny sliver of being able to deal with the tension of silence. That's a sliver of the kind of like psychological hardship that could be lying in wait for you, which you should be walking towards, or if not running. So perhaps we'll see you on the other side. Perhaps we won't. Either way, I'll send you a letter from the neighborhood of men. I'll send you a postcard. Just email me your address. And speaking of emails, if you have any questions and you're watching this on the replay, you can go to my website and contact me there. And I invite you to press that big red button in the top right corner of my website and book yourself a free call. And we'll chat for an hour and see where you're at, see what you need, and see how I can help. Okay, guys, take it easy, and I appreciate your time with me this evening. Until next time.